Hello, welcome for another episode with me, your host Nat on the Mama Circle podcast. I'm really excited that you're here. As always, if you are returning, thank you. It's so nice that you are back here with me. And if you're brand new, then a big welcome. I really hope that you enjoy what you're going to hear. If you've ever found yourself thinking, why am I the one who is doing everything? Or if you're keeping a mental tally of who's done what, how many times you've got up in the night, cooked dinner that week, how many times they've forgotten to take the bins out, then I think that this episode might be really helpful for you. I think it might give you a different way of looking at what you're experiencing right now and what so many mums experience. I know that I certainly did. And that's because everyone says parenting should be 50-50. A good relationship, a good parenting relationship means things are done 50-50. Both parents are showing up in equal ways. I'm going to be a bit contrary. I'm going to say that I don't actually think that that's true. And I know that's probably not the sentence that you're expecting me to say, but hear me out. And I think this is also going to be really helpful for those of you who are listening who are not mums yet, but who are on the way there. And I know that there are those of you who are listening. So I think this is going to be really helpful because when we talk about equal parenting and what our expectations are, I think we usually mean like splitting things down the middle. So doing an equal share of night feeds, of nappy changes, bedtimes, cooking, housework, all of that kind of thing. But the longer that I've thought about it, and I've been thinking about it for a while, the more I realize that equality and 50-50 aren't actually the same thing. I think that we've confused equal with identical. And I think that there's a reason why so many couples end up in this kind of like tit for tat keeping score space. And I think that it's because we're measuring how we are approaching parenting relationships with a metric that is quite skewed. The quickest thing that comes to my mind when I think about why we think things should be split 50-50, I think it's because it's really simple, right? It's super simple maths. In a household where there's a couple and then there's the children, there's two adults. And in terms of like the parenting and certain things around the house, like the adults are the only people who can do it. So in order for things to feel fair, we should split it down the middle. You do your half, I do my half. And that means that we're contributing equally. Done. Like super neat, super logical. It's easy to understand. And I think we've also absorbed the idea that partnerships should be equal too. Equal rights, equal opportunities, equal contribution. And I think that this is something that has been evolving over time. When we think about how feminism has risen, for example, for us now, it's an expectation. We expect that we should be an equal in our relationship. We should have our own money. We should be able to go out and work. We are not less than a man just because we are women. And that's something that I think is not only, in our cultural atmosphere, but it's because it's still relatively recent and it was so hard fought and it is still not equal across the board. It feels like it's something very, very strong, like it's a real expectation. And women have worked really hard to get an equal footing, to get to where they've got the two in their careers, or, to wait until they found a partner who feels like they are someone who understands this concept of equality. So I think that naturally we extend that into parenting, especially in situations where having a baby was intentional, starting a family was intentional. There were conversations about, are we ready? Should we do this? And even if it was an unplanned pregnancy, both people have created this child. And so surely parenting should be split equally. And it's also interesting for me here being in Germany. I think it's like this everywhere, pretty much everywhere in Europe now, but I can't speak to that. I can only speak to my experience. In a situation like I am in, where I was not married to the father of my child, he had the option to basically put his hand up legally and say, this is my child and I want to take responsibility, which means equal parental rights, which means equal say in everything from what school the child goes to, what part of the country they live in. And that's because historically a man would have been able to just kind of walk away from his family and not have to pay maintenance, not have to quote unquote take care of his responsibilities. And so I think that because fathers have been expected to be more present in their children's lives more and more over the years, we expect that parenting should also be split equally. And I agree. I'm just going to be very clear and say that I agree. But I think that we are at risk of tripping ourselves up with the language that we're using. I am a writer, so language is really, really important. And I think the words that we use are very important because what we say affects what we think, and what we think affects what we believe, and what we believe affects how we act. But when we're thinking about equality, especially when it comes to parenting, I think that we forget, or maybe it's not even that we forget, I think that we don't consider the fact that life gets in the way and it's not linear. It's changing all the time. It's dynamic, and parenting is not something that is the same in all seasons, I don't think. Some seasons naturally require one parent to carry more. If a mom is breastfeeding, then she's limited by the fact that she's breastfeeding. Yes, she can pump, but she is required to either breastfeed that child or pump enough that someone else can do it. It's not always possible to pump either. If you've got a partner who always works nights or works shifts, so they're on call, then maybe you're the one who has to do the night feeds more often. There'll be periods where one partner is ill or there's an illness in the family, like close family, and so that other one parent is going to have to do more, is going to have to pick up more than the other. Deadlines with work, one of you might be writing a PhD at the moment, and you need to just kind of like knuckle down and focus on that. If you're a solo parent, then obviously you're doing so much on your own, but also things like mental health issues, especially postpartum with that hormonal soup, that might require one parent to carry more. If you're having multiple children, if you're, now pregnant with your second or third child and you are wiped out with morning sickness, that means that you are absolutely knackered, then your partner will maybe be required to pick up more so that you can rest more. Looking after aging parents, perimenopause and menopause. Like when you think about the things that happen just in life, not even necessarily connected to your children, just the things that happen in life, like none of these things are 50-50. They can't be, because life is not static. We'll have phases in life where it feels like everything is falling down, and we'll have phases in life where we feel like we've got a lot of time and a lot of space. It ebbs and it flows. Finances is another good example of this. There might be times when you are earning more than your partner, and then there'll be times where they earn more, for example, maybe when you're on maternity leave. And even if things are quote unquote equal for a while, that doesn't mean that they always will be. I think that equal parenting is not actually about doing the exact same amount. I think that equal parenting is about responding to what your family needs in this particular moment, in this particular phase of life. And this was a really big light bulb moment for me, because I have spent a lot of time feeling like things were not equal in my last relationship. But also, I also knew at the time that there was a lot of context as to why things were not able to be quote unquote 50-50. And as I am now thinking about, what my life is going to look like in the future, I'm thinking to myself, what do I want in a partner? What does any future partner need to have or embody in order for me to feel like I would be supported, I would be seen, and I would be in a partnership that felt more equal? And that was when I kind of, really realized, like, it's not about numbers. It's not about measuring, is that person doing 50% of the tasks? Because that's not the same as taking 50% of the responsibilities. Tasks are visible. Think about your tasks as the cogs in the machine that keeps your family running. Tasks are things that you could probably write on a piece of paper, stick it to your fridge, and then anyone who came into your house would know how to execute them. Maybe not to your your perfect standards, but they'd get it. They'd be able to do it, right? So cooking dinner, anyone can do that, or you can order a takeaway. Doing bath time, anyone can do that. Taking your kids to nursery or to school, changing a nappy, anyone. Anyone can push a vacuum around the house. Anyone can take the bins out. These are the physical things that keep a household running. But responsibility is different. Responsibility is a little bit like, if you think about that machine, responsibility would be the oil that's keeping things running smoothly. It's keeping those cogs running smoothly. It's keeping the machine running smoothly. Responsibility is noticing the nappies are nearly gone, realizing the shoes don't fit anymore, remembering there's a birthday party next week, knowing that nursery is closed next Friday, booking the dentist, keeping track of vaccinations, packing the nursery bag. It's thinking ahead before there is a problem. And when it comes to the responsibilities, they are then what produces the task. So it's my responsibility to make sure that my child is going to the doctors for their well-being checkups, which means that you first of all have to know they exist. Second of all, you have to remember that it's almost time for that. Then you've got to make the appointment, then you've got to go to the appointment. And the reason why I'm differentiating between tasks and responsibility is because you can split the tasks evenly. You can have a partner who takes 50%. But even if that partner takes 50% of the tasks, it can still feel like there's one person who's carrying the family, because the responsibility might still land with them. It's kind of like when someone says, well, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. It's like, okay, they can do the task, but you are still responsible for the responsibility. It's helpful if someone takes a task from us, right? It's like, I don't have the brains for it today. I'm absolutely knackered. I can't move from the sofa. Of course, it's going to help if the partner steps in and says, okay, I'll cook dinner, because it buys us back time. It means that you might be able to have a bath while they're cooking dinner and then have an early night. Those things are absolutely helpful. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have help with tasks, but if your brain is still carrying the entire operating system of your home, then you never really switch off. It's like having 20 tabs open in your browser. And I think that's why so many moms feel exhausted. I've spoken about it before, the mental load is often more exhausting than the physical things that we do as moms. And when our operating system is constantly in use and we're constantly being responsible for the responsibilities and then for what we perceive to be an uneven amount of tasks, then that's what can lead to burnout. And actually we find ourselves then in a situation where what we need is recovery. So I think it's really important to recognize that tasks are tasks and responsibilities are responsibilities, and they're not actually the same thing. And I think that this is something that we really need to start shifting our attention towards when we talk about equality in our relationships and equality when it comes to parenting. I think we need to think about what does it feel like? Does it feel like we're in this together? Does it feel like my partner has my back? Does it feel like I'm drowning and they are, just kind of happy, gallivanting, going about their daily business? I think that when we think about parenting and equality and how equal things feel, a really good question to ask is, what does our family need right now? What does our family need in this phase? Because some weeks or some months even, it might be, I'm in this really intense phase of work and I've got to go in early and I probably have to stay late. That means that the other parent is going to have to do the nursery run in the morning and the school pickup in the afternoon, perhaps. But some weeks it might be that one of you says, you know what, I notice that you're really exhausted at the moment. Why don't I take care of dinner for the rest of the week so that you can, go out, have a walk or decompress, go to sleep, read a book, whatever. How can I help? Or putting my hand up and saying, I'm drowning in this. How can we approach this together? That to me is partnership. And this doesn't have to be a really long exercise. It's a conversation. It's a fluid conversation. It's checking in with each other. What is happening in the ecosystem of our family and how can we be there to support each other? Because even if your partner works the same hours each week, even if you've got your kind of regular appointments, even if your kids are, their nap schedules and whatever else are really, they're really tight, they're really on lockdown, things will pop up and we're constantly responding to what our needs are, what our family's needs are, and then what our external family's needs are. We need to be able to sit down and have a conversation about what does the other need and just check in with each other. And I think this is really important because the things that we tend to argue about in our relationships or when a relationship breaks down, the thing that we're arguing about or the thing that makes us decide to leave is not actually the thing that we're talking about. So a good example of that is you might walk into the kitchen in the morning and you're about to start making breakfast and you go to put something in the bin and the bin is overflowing. And it's your partner's responsibility to take care of the bins because that's what you've decided. And you know for a fact that the bins were supposed to be collected this morning because you've heard the dustbin men outside. And because your bin was not emptied, you're now going to have an overflowing bin until they collect it next week. And that might lead to a really, really big argument with your partner. The bin is just the symptom. What we're arguing about is so much deeper. It's, do you see me? Do you see the things that I do? Do you appreciate the things that I do? Do you notice what I'm carrying? Because in that example, you've kind of just walked into the situation and it's the one thing that they have to do. Or how can I be able to take care of X, Y, and Z when they can't do these minimal jobs that they have or whatever it is? I think that oftentimes those arguments, yes, it's about the washing up or it's about the bins not being emptied or the bathroom not being cleaned, but it's actually about feeling unappreciated, feeling like the other person is not pulling their weight, and then therefore leading to you having more weight to pick up, having more things on your plate. And I think this is something that a lot of mums can relate to because in the beginning of your motherhood journey, it can feel really lonely, especially if their partner's going out to work every day and maybe they don't have very much of a social village around, or, they just feel like their world has shrunk, which a lot of mums do. They might feel invisible, and it might feel like they are now responsible for carrying the family. They're responsible for their child, their baby during the day. They're also responsible for the household, the cooking, the cleaning, the laundry, the grocery shopping, because they're the ones who are at home. And because they're the ones who are at home, they're the ones who notice, are the nappies running low? Are they going up a clothes size? We need to remember to buy toilet paper. That's what can lead to feeling like, they are now the default parent. But I also wonder if dads experience something similar, because, when you speak to dads, or you read Reddit posts, or you read comments that are geared to dads, or you follow the content creators or social media people who speak to dads and, especially about equality and inequality in relationships, you do hear very often the same things. So the mums have got their things that I've just mentioned, but the things that a lot of dads speak about is feeling like nothing they do is good enough. You know, they are going out to work, they're busting their ass to bring in money for their family, and then they're being asked to also remember to book the dentist appointment, remember to do this, remember to do that, also pick up, X, Y, and Z. They feel like they're working hard, they feel like they're providing, they feel like they're trying, and yet somehow they are constantly falling short because they're being asked to do more or to maybe even do it better, do it different. And on top of that, they're no longer up in the hierarchy anymore. There's a baby now who is needing so much attention, who maybe has taken their place in the marital bed because they're co-sleeping and there's no space for them, or, all the mum can think about is the baby. They feel unseen. Both people feel like they are giving their best. They're giving their all. They're approaching this relationship with everything they have. They're approaching their family with everything they have, which is why scorekeeping doesn't fix anything. And it's something that's very easy to slip into as well because, it can feel like there's a sense of injustice. Like, why can't this person see what I'm doing? And so our very human brain wants to almost show them, well, these are the things that I'm doing. Why are you not noticing? And then reeling off this list. And the other person says, okay, but I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And I think that this list would not need to be counted if there wasn't a sense of injustice, if there wasn't a feeling of abandonment, if there wasn't a feeling of being unsupported. I think that scorekeeping, tit for tat tallying happens when people start to feel like they're alone. And I think that's when I, really started to realize, like, okay, I think that we're measuring the wrong thing. You're speaking about the same topic. You're speaking about things not being equal in our household. And you've got two people speaking about the same topic, but neither one of them can understand the other. It's almost like they're speaking two different languages. And the reason why we're speaking different languages is because we're looking at this from like a mathematical, simple, logical perspective, and it isn't, because life isn't. The World Cup is on right now, and I'm really enjoying watching it. But think about a football team. So in a football team, you've got 11 players, different positions, midfield, attack, defense, goalkeepers. They all have different responsibilities. Now, I'm not a footballer. I've never been in a footballer's changing room. But I can imagine that when they're doing their strategy and whatever else, they're being given tasks, right? It's like, we know that this person is, if they get the ball, we are in problems. Like they're, Ronaldinho or something. It's like, we don't want that person to get the ball. Make sure they don't get it. That's your one and only task. Make sure that that player does not get anywhere near the ball. If you're a goalkeeper, your one and only task, make sure that any balls that come in your direction do not hit the back of the net. In an average match, the goalkeeper probably touches the ball less than anybody else. The only other person on that pitch who doesn't touch the ball is the referee. The goalkeeper arguably runs a lot less. Like everyone else is running up and down on that pitch. The goalkeeper, we don't even know what they're doing when we're watching on TV because you can't see them. They're just maybe standing there having a cup of tea. I don't know. But they're basically waiting for the ball to come towards them. And in most cases, the goalkeeper doesn't score goals. Not always, does happen, but the goalkeeper is not expected to score a goal. I think that if we were to look at a football team and measure contribution by how many times someone scores or how many times someone touches the ball, we would say, without a doubt, 100%, that goalkeeper is not pulling their weight. They do not deserve to be on this team. They need to get out of here. But we don't watch football like that. because we understand that the goalkeeper's role is different. Their role is different to a midfielder. Their role is different to a defender. It's not smaller. It's not bigger. It's not any more or less important. It's just different. The team isn't trying to make everyone do exactly the same thing. The team, first of all, is playing to their strengths. Everyone knows what their strengths are and they are maximizing them. And the team is trying to win together. And I think that something that happens in relationships after having kids is that there can be a feeling like we're not on the same team anymore. And especially when we start to get into tit for tat, because now it's like, this is what I'm doing. This is what my contribution is. This is what's on my side of the table. And you're not helping enough with what's on my side of the table. Whereas actually what we should be talking about is like the needs of the family. I think that we've maybe been measuring parenting like accountants when actually we should be thinking about it like coaches. Because I'm pretty sure that, I actually don't even know who the England football team manager is right now, but I'm pretty sure that he's not asking, did everybody contribute exactly the same amount of a percentage in this match? No, I think it's more about, okay, what does the team need from each person today? And I really think that the more that we can approach relationships and families as a team, the better off that we are going to be. Because to go back to what I said in the beginning, like things will change. The environment that you're operating in as a family will change. There'll be sickness, there'll be wins, there'll be challenges, there'll be all kinds of things that require us to flex. It should not be a fixed and regimented thing. And I think that when it is a fixed and regimented thing, we really back ourselves into a corner. Now, this is not to say people, dads usually, who are not picking up any of the tasks don't have to, because we're not approaching this in the right way. That doesn't necessarily mean it's teamwork. No, but it might be that their strength is not in cooking. You know, like maybe they just burn toast. They can't boil an egg. Maybe their responsibility is putting together a meal plan for the week of things that are super duper easy, or, I don't know, ordering the HelloFresh boxes. There's a way that they can contribute that isn't necessarily doing the task, but is taking the responsibility for the tasks. It might be that they are the ones who are responsible for going around the house and looking at what do we need from the grocery shop this week and putting that into the app that you both share so that you don't have to do it. I think we need to perhaps be more creative and have a bit of a wider lens in terms of what we expect our significant others to do once we become parents, and remembering that the team is what's important, the family is what's important, and contributions might be more or might be less depending on like what is going on at any given time. And I think that when we can do that, then we can feel more seen. If you can sit down with your partner and have this conversation about like, okay, this is what's coming up in the next week or 2 weeks, and how are we gonna like help each other, then gosh, how much better does that feel? It feels like, okay, I'm being seen. Even if, you know, like to take the example of someone who's writing a PhD, you know, they're in the last little bit of writing their PhD, and it's really intense and it's all consuming, and that's what their brain is on. Like, you might be in that situation for like months, but if you know that because you're sitting down and you're looking at what are the needs of our family, what are my needs, what's going on, then it's not going to be as easy for resentment to seep in, because you know that they've got this really intense thing going on. You know that means that you're probably going to have to pick up more slack for now. But you also know that there are still ways that they're going to be able to contribute to the responsibilities of how your household runs. And you also know that once they're through that intense phase, things are going to flex and change. They're going to have more capacity. That means you're going to have less responsibility on your shoulders. And When we can do that, we feel like we're being seen, we feel like we're being appreciated, we're not being taken for granted. It's not just being taken for granted that, well, I'm not going to empty the bin, I know that she'll do it. It's like, no, you're on the same team. Because actually, when your children grow up, they're also going to be contributing to this household. A family is a team of people. And I think when we're having those conversations, it's less about equality and more about balance and restoring balance when life tips the scales in one or other direction, which it will always do. And I think when we do that, then we're not leaving one person to carry the entire weight of the family by themselves. We're not leaving one person to, just be stuck in abandonment. And those are the things that lead to resentment and then to the breakdown of relationships. So instead of asking like, oh, you're not doing 50% of the cooking, you're not doing 50% of the cleaning, you're not putting in 50% of the money to our household finances, our household's income. That's because families are not spreadsheets. We need to think more about, does this feel balanced? Do we feel like we are part of a team? So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are about this. It's something that I know that I am taking into my future in terms of my relationships, whether that's friendships, whether it's romantic relationships, because I think it is a trap to think in those very binary, logical, simple mathematical equations, because life doesn't always follow the scripts that we set out for ourselves. I'd love to hear what you think about this. So if you've made it this far, then I'm going to assume that you're resonating with this and that you're liking what you hear. And I would love it if you could please leave a review. It takes 10 seconds. Go to whatever platform you're listening on right now. If not, if you're driving, obviously, but just press stars. If you want to leave me a comment as well, that's fantastic, but just press the stars. It really does help the algorithms to understand that this is something that people want to listen to, and it will put it in front of more people, which is my goal. So I would really love it if you could do that. And if you're not already, then please press the follow button. That also really helps. And it also means that you'll get the episodes uploaded into a little corner of the podcast player that you're listening on without having to do anything at all. And I will be eternally grateful. So I'm really happy that you've been here with me this week. I'd love to hear what you think. You can always reach out to me. My inbox is always open, and I look forward to seeing you back here for the next episode.